I'm going to start this morning by quoting my favorite song by my favorite band. In their song, Scarlet Begonias, the good old Grateful Dead sang, "Once in a while you can get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right." I'd try and sing it, but I've already been upstaged. Once in a while, you can get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. This sermon got its start when, right around the 4th of July, my favorite newspaper columnist, Thomas Friedman, wrote about pondering the song America the Beautiful, which we just got through singing, as Brandi Carlile, my favorite singer these days, performed it at this year's Super Bowl. We have a Brandi Carlile fan over here anymore? I was suddenly struck by the concluding verse Friedman wrote in his column, which reads, "And crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea." And crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. What does that mean? I asked myself, Friedman continued. To crown thy good with brotherhood. Friedman said that the author of the lyrics, Catherine Lee Bates, seemed to be saying that the reward for doing good was brotherhood. The reward for doing good was brotherhood. What an interesting formulation, Friedman enthused. Brotherhood, or as we in the church more accurately and inclusively call it, koinonia, was for Catherine Bates the greatest achievement of all. Brotherhood, or koinonia, was a greater achievement than doing good. Doing good was the means, but koinonia was the goal. Now I realize Catherine Bates is not one of the biblical writers, and so her words do not have the authority of the Gospels, but maybe they should have. I've preached more sermons than I can count in my almost 55 years as an ordained Presbyterian minister, but Thomas Friedman's insight and Catherine Bates' lyric, which I've heard a million times, struck me as something I'd never heard in all my 80 years. It kind of blew my mind like an aging hippie's should. If our good deeds, and let's face it, this world needs more good deeds, not fewer, if our good deeds are not the goal of the Christian life, but simply the means to the creation of God's realm, koinonia, then for me it changes the whole way I look at ministry and the church. The point of my efforts, my ministry, no matter what that ministry may entail, is to do what I can, by God's grace, to create that beloved community, that koinonia, which is God's mission and purpose for God's world. That's what distinguishes the church from all the other do-gooders and social service providers with whom we partner, and they are valuable partners. They are essential partners. All our efforts towards peace with justice are not about doing good per se, but about creating God's beloved community. Take today's lesson from the Gospel of John. The community around Lazarus has been shattered by his death. Jesus instinctively understands the community's brokenness. And in response, Jesus performs perhaps his most stunning miracle, though the Gospel of John never refers to this action by Jesus as a miracle. The Gospel of John did not consider this to be a miracle. But nevertheless, Jesus resurrected Lazarus. And get this, the raised Lazarus exits the tomb, still bound up in his burial shrouds, and Jesus makes clear that this is no simple resurrection of an individual, but the restoration of a broken community. Unbind him and let him go, Jesus instructs those gathered. We all know Jesus could do anything. Burial shrouds are no barrier to what Jesus can do. But Jesus understood that the restoration of broken community is the responsibility of the community. Let me say that again. Restoration of broken community is the responsibility of the community. Wholeness requires all of us to participate in the creation and restoration of God's koinonia. And so Jesus, when he could have freed Lazarus of his shrouds, recognizes them for what they are, materials that separate Lazarus from the community, and it is the community's responsibility to remove those shrouds, to remove those burdens, to remove all that which separated Lazarus from his community, even death. My favorite Thanksgiving of all time was in 1969. I was a second-year seminarian at San Francisco Seminary, Theological Seminary, living in a seminary-owned apartment in Berkeley. Yep, Berkeley in 1969, that was me. You're getting the picture, right? I couldn't afford to go home for Thanksgiving that year. Neither could my good friend Chuck Stewart, a Chicagoan, who lived across the hall. So we decided to cook Thanksgiving dinner for whoever wanted to come. We borrowed a sandwich board from a local corner market that was not open on Thanksgiving and put a big sign outside our building inviting anyone who wanted to come for Thanksgiving dinner, and then we started cooking. Later that day, about 20 people, none of whom either of us had ever met before, showed up and filled our 2 apartments with love, laughter, and koinonia. That community only lasted for a few hours, but what a grand community it was. In Matthew's account of Jesus feeding the 5,000 people who had gathered to hear him preach, we see the same focus on the gathered community. The problem is that the people are hungry, and there doesn't appear to be enough food to feed them all. While his followers are wondering where enough food is going to be found, Jesus issues a simple instruction reminiscent of his instruction to the people outside Lazarus' tomb. He says to them, "You feed them." That's what he says. You feed them. And the disciples discover that when the entire community gets involved, there's plenty to go around. But the community has to create and sustain itself. You feed them, Jesus said. And they were fed. So I have this new understanding, thanks to Thomas Friedman, that all of our efforts are not ends in and of themselves, but are the means to an end, to the end of a koinonia, a community, an inseparable, united community that encompasses us all. The promise of the gospel is that every one of us has the same God-given goal, to be a creator of koinonia. Whatever we are doing for the church, for the community, for our families, for striking union workers at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, for those who are working to end gun violence here in this community and all around the state of Pennsylvania and the country. Whatever we are doing for the church, for the community, for our families, that's God's mission. That's our mission. It's the mission of creating community wherever we are, in whatever ways we can, with whoever we can. In my favorite novel, Another Roadside Attraction, by one of my favorite novelists, Tom Robbins, he writes about butterfly trees. Listen to this. Along their migratory routes, monarch butterflies stay nights in certain trees. The butterfly trees, as they are called, are carefully chosen, although the criteria exercised in their selection are not known. Species is unimportant, obviously, for at one stopover the roosting tree may be a eucalyptus, at another a cedar or an elm. But, and this is what is interesting, they are always the same trees. Year after year, whether moving south or returning north, monarch butterflies will paper with their myriad wings at twilight a single tree that has served as a monarch motel 1,000 times before. Memory? If so, it is genetic. For you see, the butterflies who journey south are not the ones who come back north. Monarchs lay their eggs in sunny climes, then they die. The hordes who flutter northward in spring are a succeeding generation. Yet without hesitation, they roost in the same trees as did their ancestors. Scientists have examined butterfly trees and found them chemically and physically identical to the trees surrounding them. Yet no other tree will do. Investigators have camouflaged the tree's color, altered its scent. The monarch butterflies were not fooled. Another of nature's mysterious constants. A monarch butterfly always knows when it is there. Let's go out and be butterfly trees. May it be so. Amen. Please join